Hi everybody, and welcome back. I'm Clinton with Oval Window Racing. Today, I've got a few things I'd like to discuss with you, and one of them is, why do I have a steering wheel on this engine? Before we get started with that, I'd actually like to walk you through this engine. This is the long block I just finished up for my buddy, and it was a lengthy project, but we got her done. We got the final assembly here. I do have a few other small things to bolt on it, but once I get that all finished, I can send it down the road. And here we go. This is my buddy's long block here. This little guy started its life out as a 1600 dual port Type 1 Volkswagen engine. Probably came out of a mid-70s bug. And it's actually going to be going back into mid-70s bug. Tell by the color of the block. Buddy's car is actually purple. This engine built on a base of going to be a driver. It's not no big fire-breathing, high-powered engine. Just something he likes to scoot back and forth around town in. So we went with kind of a mild build here. In the spec sheet here I got, this is going to be a 2110cc engine. And for us people that speak American, that's a whopping 129 cubic inches. And it's kind of a different build because most standard people that put together a 2110 go with a 90.5 millimeter cylinder or bore with an 82 stroke. This one's actually a 94 millimeter bore with a 76 millimeter crank. Now the heads we got here, I don't have too much information on them other than the fact that they are a Mexican built head. It says right there. It'll focus. Mexican. And the numbers, there'd normally be a serial number, there's all stamped off. But they are actually really nice looking. And I would like to give the head porter a shout out, but I don't know who that is. Something we kind of found on eBay and he purchased, but they believe they were a 40 millimeter intake, 35.5 millimeter exhaust, and you can see there that they are a dual spring. And the CC with a nice, like I said, they were beautifully done within a great unshrouded compression chamber. Those wound up being 52 cc's. Alright, all the case work, machine work I had done on the case was done at Green's Bug Shop. Give a good shout out to Jim Green, and I'll leave contact information down below on how you can get a hold of him. Onto the internals, like I said earlier, it was a 76 millimeter crankshaft. I'm not really sure on the make. It was something my buddy had picked up. These are Mahle SEMA pistons. And then the camshaft is SLR cams. The specs right here. Steve Long Racing cams. It's a cam grinder over in California. Again, I'll leave contact information down below. You give a big shout out to Steve. Does a great job. If you don't really know what you want, you can always call him up, have a small chat with him, and he's always good for recommendations. And on a side note, he just doesn't do Volkswagen cams. He does a lot of other hard to find cams. So if it's anything else that you guys are working on that you need a camshaft for, give Steve a call. Nice friendly guy. With all that said, let's get on to discussing why I have a steering wheel on this engine. Alright, this steering wheel is something I just came up with, or an idea I've had. I just never really figure out how I wanted to do this over. I mean, it's always great to crank the engine over by hand. You have to do this quite a bit when you're pre-assembling these engines. And when I mean pre-assembling, it usually means trial fitting. And there's lots of reasons why you got to trial fit. Number one reason is because majority of the time, aftermarket parts just don't fit like they're advertised. The other reason is whenever you're modifying rod length, piston diameter, crank stroke, camshaft, lift, things have a tendency to want to run into each other, and we don't want that to happen. You know, the high RPMs running into things running in together, just don't go together well. So you always have to pre-assemble, trial fit things, and rotate stuff around. Make sure stuff's not slapping each other. I've always, in the past, just pretty much grabbed a hold of this flywheel back here, and I'll show you this flywheel here. So there's teeth on there. You know, you can roll it around by hand, but eventually you wind up just digging into your hand, and that hurts, especially when you're running dual valve springs and you got your rockers and everything on. It gets pretty hard to roll this over. So about a few months back, going through one of my friend's Facebook pages, and he had a steering wheel bolted to his engine. I'm like, that's a great idea. That's a lot softer, and it's meant to be turned around. Now, what I'm going to show you is what I like to call a poor man's compression test. Again, it's always good and wise to use a compression gauge when you're really trying to diagnose an engine. But what I'm doing here is for trial fitting purposes, and this could save you quite a bit of time, especially if you have a bad valve, if your head isn't on the engine straight or square, if you have bad rings, and hopefully if you're a rebuilding engine, you're putting new rings on. But I tell you what, folks, I've unboxed heads before that had horrible valve jobs right from the factory. Not every head that comes out of the box is going to have a good valve job, and a lot of times I like to have a 3-angle valve job put on, so I always have my head builders double check and do a good job. And there's steps, not to go into too much detail, but there's steps you can do when you get your heads to check the valve job. But this is just another test to do just that. And how the test goes is you're going to rotate the engine around. We'll be using the steering wheel, Clinton. You're going to check, like I'm going to do cylinder number 4, this is cylinder number 2 here. I just rotated so I could see the piston at the top, and as you can tell, there's no rocker arms on here whatsoever, so the valves are going to remain closed. So you don't really have to worry whether or not you have a compression stroke or an exhaust stroke, because the valves are closed. But what I do is I rotate the engine now back down to the bottom. And when it gets down to the bottom, I'll actually stick my thumb right over the hole and press down really hard and crank again. And that's what you want to hear, that nice pop. Sometimes when you do this and you start ringing it up, you'll actually hear the cylinder leak down, but I'm not hearing that. That's good. And the steering wheel will get hard to roll over. Do that again. It must leak down a little bit. Nice, nice, nice. All right, now let's check the other 3. All right, there we have it. This gives us a good indication what type of shape this part of the engine is in. And when you go to run it, if it doesn't run, I guess the first places you're probably going to check is the ignition or the fuel system, because this all seems to be hunky-dory. All right, just to give you guys an idea how I kind of came up with this little compression test. Several years back, I was building an engine. Something I was just kind of put together. It was either going to be a spare engine for my car, or maybe I'd possibly sell it. But I decided I wanted to try test running it. At that particular time, I didn't have an engine in my car, so I decided, let's just throw it in the back of the car and see if it'll run. So I did. Of course, I couldn't get the thing to run. So I took it back out and threw it back up on the engine stand and tried to figure out what was going on. Well, what I came up with was this fin, cooling fin here on the head, The base part of that was interfering with the top cooling fin base of the cylinder here. So it was not allowing the cylinder to seal with the head. You don't get that to happen. You have a big air leak, things don't run. What I had going on was a set of heads that were highly modified. They were decked for a really tight combustion chamber, and a lot of times when the high performance guys do that, they'll actually remove this fin. But these weren't, and I actually like that fin. Just the fins are there to cool, and I tend to run a lot of my engines on the street. So the better the cooling, better life the engine's going to have in the car. But they were interfering. So I had to go in and do a little mill work, a little grinding, so things wouldn't hit in order to get them to seal again. And when I put the engine back together to test fit, I just tried this, seemed to work, and I've been doing it ever since. In closing, I'd just like to state that that's a nice, quick, easy test, to figure out how what type of shape your engine's in. Like I said, it's not replacing a compression test or a leak down tester, but it's a good, like I said, a good quick way of finding out the condition of an engine. Something like this, that's my final assembly, I should have that all figured out. Like I said, I like to do this when I'm pre-assembling, trial fitting things. That's normally how I like to do it. Like if you're shopping for junkyard engines or swap meet engines, or someone happens to bring an engine over and wants to know what type of shape it's in, that's a really good quick way to find out what kind of shape it's in. Well, thanks for watching and joining me today. If you found this video educational or entertaining, please hit the like, subscribe, share, and maybe even hit the little bell ringy thing for anything I may do in the near future, because I do have a few more things planned. Take care and good night.